The following program is a production of The Bob and John Show. Any similarity between person and places is strictly a coincidence. The producers of this program are solely responsible for its content.
It's now time for the Sudsy Wudsy Show, brought to you by Sudsy Wudsy. Sudsy Wudsy. It's an all-purpose cleaner. It's a car wash. It's a bubble bath. Yes, it's Sudsy Wudsy. Sudsy Wudsy now proudly presents The Adventures of Jimmy Ballpoint, Private Investigator. Ear, eyes, and nose. The complete package. Jimmy Ballpoint.
This is where I work, the city. It used to be a nice place with nice people. But like everything else, they left. And now the city is a dark and gritty city with dark and gritty sidewalks, with dark and gritty taxis. Downright depressing if it wasn't for the gum stuck under the tables at the automat. I'm Jimmy Ballpoint, private investigator. Ear, eye, and nose, the complete package. My office is up 3 flights of stairs, straight up, right above a flop house. A little office with a desk, chair, sink, and a couch. Like I said, a dark and gritty place. But it's just right for a guy like me. The case that I'm working on now is the case of room number 6. Yeah, Jimmy Ballpoint, private whatchamacallit. Ear, eyes, forehead, whatever. Oh, Vernon, that you? What time is it? Oh, no, you're not bothering me. I was, just going through some files and stuff. What can I do for you, Vernon? You need a ride? Where are you, Vernon? On a merry-go-round? What the heck are you? Okay. Let me splash some water on my face and head on over. Vernon never ceases to amaze me with the things he gets involved with. He's in the private eye business, too. Divorces in process. A rough racket. Well, that ought to wake a mug up. Okay. Let's see what good old Vernon got himself into this time. I reached for my hat and coat and headed down the stairs. I stopped by Vernon's office, looked at the name on the door, and saw Vernon's name spelled wrong. What is it with this sign painter around here? We do have an issue. I'm gonna have to meet up with this mug. I went through the front door of my building and turned right. The taxi stand was just a short walk, right next to Angel's Bar. I no sooner sat on the bench and the taxi stand than the taxi pulled up. I got up and reached for the back door and was ready to get in when I froze. There behind the wheel was Danny Morbid. Oh, great. This is just peachy. I told Danny to take me to the circus grounds just outside of town. On the way out, Danny told me of his experiences at the circus when he was a kid. How his father drove the clown car and dropped him off at the school every morning. Not an easy thing to explain to the kids from the east side. How he was mistaken for one of the monkeys in the cycling act, and it took a week to cut him out of that little red vest and that round hat. But other than that, things were good. Danny Morbid dropped me off at the carnival's entrance, right near the carousel. I forked over 2 bits and made my way over to the carousel and found Vernon tied up to the back end of one of the wooden horses. Kind of a strange position. Did nothing for the kids staring at Vernon, not to mention where the carousel rings were stuck. I got on the carousel and started to untie Vernon. Vernon, how the heck did you get in this spot? When I removed a portion of the rope covering his mouth, Vernon just rolled his eyes and steadied himself as he stood up. He made his way over to a bench, shaking a pants leg, then sat down. He said he followed a big mug to Long's Motel, just outside of town, room number 6. He waited for the sun to go down. It was past midnight. He slowly crept to the room number 6. The light was off. He slowly opened the door, ready to take some pictures, when the lights weren't off. This mug was just changing the light bulb, and the rest is saying hello to the back end of this wooden horse. Well, Vernon, did you get your pictures? Vernon reached into his coat pocket and pulled out this long line of twisted metal and a roll of exposed film. Oh. The mug that ran the carousel started the thing up again, and we left. Danny Morbid drove us back to town and dropped us off in front of our office building. We made our way upstairs. Jeez, Vernon, how many of those things did they stick you with? I dropped Vernon off at his office and headed upstairs to my office. I entered my office and tossed my hat and coat at the coat rack. I missed, of course. Hello, Jimmy Ballpoint, private investigator. Ear, eyes, and nose, the complete package. The voice on the other end was cold, all business. It was a dame. She said her name was Veronica Bubbles, co-owner of the Smile and Blow bubblegum fortune. I paused for a moment and thought to myself, somebody should have given more time to think that one through. She said she hired a private investigator to follow her husband, an investigator that's in the same building as me. You mean Vernon? He's a good man. She said she heard about his visit to Long's Motel last night. She thought he could use some help. I asked the dame why. She said her husband is Herman Bubbles. There was a pause, a long pause. I thought to myself, why does that name sound familiar? Why? Wait a minute. You gotta be kidding me. Herman Bubbles. The Herman Bubbles. Herman Bubbles, the head of the Bubbles organization. The Bubbles used to control the rackets in this city. But then old man Pierogi moved in, and Bubbles went up for 10 years. He just got out a few weeks ago. The dame told me that Herman can be a handful at times. In fact, she thinks his hands are very full right now with somebody else. She wants to know who and where. Like she said, Vernon may need a little help on this one. He may need a man who can really handle himself. A guy who's tough, knows his way around. I thought to myself that if Dame butters me up any more, I'd be on a serving napkin on the counter of Carney's Diner. I was about to tell the dame thanks, but no thanks, when she dropped the notion of a lot of simoleons for taking the job. I told the dame that I'd have to sit down with Vernon, and I'd get back to her. As I hung up the phone, Vernon stood in the opening of my office door and looked back and forth. He said he heard voices, so he didn't want to barge in unannounced. I motioned to Vernon to come in and take a load off. He sat in a chair next to my desk and started to rub his forehead. Okay, Vernon. I just had a call from Veronica Bubbles about the job she wants done. Now, this could work out for both of us if we play our cards right. Vernon looked worried and asked me if I had seen this mug, Bubbles. This guy's a hammer, the real deal. A mountain of a mug, hard as a rock. Why, this mug can block out the sun. I asked Vernon if we should pass on this one. He just sat there and shook his head back and forth. It seemed that Vernon already spent his advance for the job. I reached into my bottom left drawer of my desk and grabbed a bottle of Amber Glow. I got 2 shot glasses and poured Vernon and me a drink. I raised my shot glass and toasted to our new deal. Vernon stood up, turned and took 2 steps towards my office door and... I forgot that Vernon had a low tolerance for booze. Where the heck are all those rings coming from? I decided to let Vernon sleep it off. I left my office and headed for Angel's bar. I gotta find more information about this Bubbles character. I made it down the stairs and out into the street and headed to Angel's. I approached Two-Finger Tommy's shoeshine stand and saw Tommy sitting on one of the buffing seats, reading the morning edition. He lowered the paper, and I motioned to him that I had a question. Tommy, you remember a hammer by the name of Herman Bubbles? Tommy got this stark look on his face, dropped the paper, and headed for the back of his shoeshine stand. I followed Tommy, and he crouched behind some boxes. He waved his hands back and forth, not wanting to talk about it. This Bubble guy must be some piece of pavement. I left Two Fingers and entered Angel's bar. I covered a stool. Angel came over and poured my usual. I left 2 bits on the bar. As Angel went to turn away, I asked him, Angel, do you remember a mug by the name of Herman Bubbles? Angel went over to an empty spot where the bottle of amber glow came from and shoved it back. Angel seemed upset. Now, Angel was a level-headed guy, but I wouldn't want to be around when he got upset. Heck, even Wrinkles gave the guy a lot of room when he got upset. Angel came back and rested both hands on the bar in front of me, took a deep breath and asked, "Why do I ask?" Before I answered, he told me that 10 years ago, things were very different around here. Angel said the Bubbles ran this city with an iron fist, tight and without any daylight. Things were a bit dicey back then. A lot of mugs took swimming lessons, if you know what I mean. Things were bad. Bubbles was open to mood swings, bad mood swings. Then Pierogi and his way of doing business moved into the city. At first, things were quiet. Everybody got along. You live your life, I'll live mine. Then Bubbles and a carload of gorillas took a ride to Pierogi's warehouse. They all drove up. Then a truck crashed to the front door. The Hammers got out, loaded to the hilt, ran into Pierogi's warehouse. But Pierogi and his boys were waiting for them. It wasn't pretty, I can tell you that. When the smoke cleared, the only one standing was Herman, Bubbles. Pierogi could have ventilated Bubbles big time, but he didn't. To this day, no one knows why. Now we have an order to things. It's quiet. Everybody knows their place. Like I said, there's an order to things. Angel finished, took a towel from the counter behind him and started wiping off the bar. As he passed my way with the towel, I raised my glass so he could wipe the damp ring left by my shot glass. He paused for a moment and said, "I'd better go." For whatever reason, Angel felt uncomfortable just standing there. I left Angel's and returned to my office. I sat in my swivel chair, reached for my phone, and tapped the cradle, holding the receiver. The operator answered. It was Kelly, the telephone operator. "How you doing, beautiful?" Kelly recognized my voice and asked when was I going to take her to dinner at that swanky restaurant just outside of town like I promised. It's no secret that Kelly and I were a number once, but that's another story. I'm working on it, doll. Connect me to Long's Motel. I gotta see if a mug I'm looking for is staying there. There was a pause, then Kelly said, "Sure, tough guy. Take care of yourself." The phone rang for a while, then old man Wong picked it up. I made some small talk and listened to old man Wong tell me about his grandkids. I interrupted the old guy by asking him if he had a Herman Bubbles registered there. I could hear the flipping of paper, then Wong came back with, "Yes, a Mr. Herman Bubbles, a party of 2. I thanked Wong, then hung the receiver back up in its cradle. A party of 2. I left my office and headed down the stairs to Vernon's office. The door to his office was open, so I waltzed in and told Vernon, "Let's take a ride out to Wong's Motel. Vernon got his hat, and we went downstairs and into the street. We no sooner left our building when a taxi pulled up next to the curb. I reached for the back door and was about to get in when I froze. It was Danny Morbid again. He heard that Herman Bubbles was back in town, and we might want a lift to Wong's motel. Vernon and I got in, and Danny started to tell us about the forecast for today. Possible heavy rains again, mudslides, washouts, and flooded streets. Vernon and I just looked at each other, then looked outside the windows of the cab. It was getting late in the evening, but not a cloud in the sky. Really nice day, in fact. Danny said he was listening to his radio at home. He listens to the weather in Peru. Nice place, nice people. The weather just puts him in the mood for the day. Okay. We drove up to the entrance of Wong's motel, and I told Danny to pull over and let us out. I gave Danny a sawbuck and we left. Vernon and I relaxed in a small lobby of the motel, waiting for the night sky to take over. We left the lobby and headed for room 6. I stopped 2 doors down, trying to organize myself before doing anything. Vernon kept on walking. Vernon stopped a few doors up and motioned me to join him. I was a little confused. I joined Vernon and he motioned to the room number 6. I looked at the number and I noticed the outline of another number above the metal number on the door. The outline of the number 9 was hard to see, but it was there. The top tack holding the metal number 9 had come out, and the metal number 9 hung upside down, looking like a 6. Just then the door opened, and there was this mug holding an ice bucket. He recognized Vernon. Not good. I gotta give Vernon credit for some quick thinking. He smiled at the guy and said, "Room service?" I helped Vernon up, dusted him off, and we went down a few doors. It was quiet. Vernon pressed his ear to the door and made a facial expression of nothing. Vernon quietly turned a skeleton key in the door and slowly entered the dark room. To both our surprise, Herman Bubbles was right next to the door, changing a light bulb in a floor lamp next to the door of the room. What is it with the light bulbs in this joint? Herman Bubbles looked nothing like his reputation. He was old, wrinkle-faced, and hands square-jawed, big but aged. The lockup takes a lot out of a guy. It looked to me that Bubbles had little else to give. Bubbles reached over and grabbed Vernon by the face and pulled him closer. Vernon surprised the daylight out of me. He actually reached back and gave Bubbles a smack right in the chops. Vernon's fist bounced off Bubbles' face, like hitting the side of a brick. Bubbles turned sideways, rolled his mouth back and forth, and Bubbles spit out a tooth like it was no big deal. At that moment, 2 words came to my mind. Uh-oh. I thought that one more pop in the chops would do it. I had my Jersey boxcar wrapped around my knuckles. I reared back and let Bubbles have it. My fist with the knuckle buster bounced off Bubbles' face, like hitting the side of a brick wall. Bubbles turned sideways, rolled his mouth back and forth, and spit out another tooth like it was no big deal. At that moment, I looked at Vernon, and he looked at me. Two words came to my mind. Goodbye, Bubbles. Vernon and I just stood there waiting for Herman Bubbles Express to come rolling through when a paw of a bigger mug loosened Herman Bubbles' grip on Vernon. It was Wrinkles. Vernon and I just stood there. We couldn't move. This came right out of the blue. Wrinkles opened the door behind us and motioned us to scram. Seemed like a good idea at the time. Vernon was about to reach for his camera when I caught his hand and held it until we reached the motel lobby. I looked at Vernon and told him that there were reasons why he was tied up to the back end of a wooden horse. We grabbed the taxi and got back to our building. Vernon entered his office. I got back to my office and sat back in my swivel chair. Something was bugging me about Wrinkles being there. Something. I spent the rest of the evening going through old newspapers. Stacks and stacks of old newspaper. I found the edition that covered the story of Herman Bubbles being sent up. It was front page stuff at the time. There next to Herman was Mrs. Veronica Bubbles and her son. I got a magnifying glass and studied the picture. Wait a minute. Wait just a minute. Veronica Bubbles was a real looker in her day. And the kid next to her, he looks really wait a minute. Same square jaw, same build. Wrinkles. Herman Bubbles is Wrinkles' old man. That's it. The newspaper said the only surviving members of the Bubbles organization were Herman Bubbles and his son. So, that's it. Funny thing about the old guys back then, they were hard men, tough as they come. But sometimes, somewhere along the line, there's respect for those that make it. Pierogi must have seen that with Herman Bubbles. And being with his kid that night are the only two reasons why Bubbles is still around, to do time in the can. Hello, Jimmy Ballpoint, private investigator. Ear, eyes, and nose, the complete package. It was Veronica Bubbles. She heard about our visit to Wong's motel. 2 checks would be in the mail. As much as I was satisfied with the ending of all this, walking around with what I know can be baggage. Baggage is a risky thing to walk around with in this city. I picked up the phone and called Vernon's office. I better have a talk with Vernon on keeping this thing quiet. Hello, Vernon. Vernon, we gotta talk.
Well, folks, that concludes another episode of Jimmy Ballpoint, Private Investigator, brought to you by Sudsy Wudsy, that all-purpose cleaner. Keep your radio dial on this station for next week's Jimmy Ballpoint, Private Investigator. Ear, eye, nose, the complete package.